Friends, our scripture lesson today is taken from the Gospel according to Luke, chapter 10, verses 38 through 42. Now, as they went on their way, he entered a certain village where a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. She had a sister named Mary who sat at the Lord's feet and listened to what he was saying. But Martha was distracted by her many tasks, so she came to him and asked, "Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to do all the work by myself? Tell her then to help me." But the Lord answered her, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There is need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part, which will not be taken away from her." Friends, this is the word of the Lord. Well, I think all of us have probably asked ourselves this question at some point. What is essential to a fulfilling life? So we've probably wondered about this, and there's a survey that was taken of Americans. It's called the American Perspectives Survey. And one of the things that's interesting about the survey, but it makes perfect sense, is that the answers change considerably depending on how old the respondent is, all right? And so when I show you the answers, I just decided to pick 45 as an age. So I just wanted to pick an age sort of in the middle because your answers, at 25 are very different from your answers at 45 and very different than my answers at just about 65, okay? And so it changes. So I picked 45 to just kind of be in the middle of things, and here were their answers. All right, so first of all, earning a lot of money was only 15%. So only 15% said earning money was essential to a fulfilling life. Being married was actually the most interesting answer because it was the answer that had the widest gender gap. All right? And so even though the population as a whole said 25%, 25% of the population as a whole said that being married was essential to a fulfilling life, that broke down to 32% of men said being married was essential, but only 19% of women said it was essential, and it averaged out. So, what can I say? Right? Clearly, some of us need the others more than the others need us, but that's just the way it is on those answers. Only 27% said having children, but having a career you enjoy was the response of 56% of 45-year-olds, and having good friends was 58%. Okay. So, clearly, having a good job, having a career you enjoy, I should say, and having good friends are the two most important things. So, how is it that we actually spend our time? The Bureau of Labor Statistics surveys how you spend your hours. And these hours per day include work time, but they don't include sleep, and they don't include personal grooming time, okay? So those are excluded. And when you look at that, you spend over 5 hours, nearly 6 hours alone, and a lot of that is work, whether it's work from home or in your office or in your cubicle, wherever it is, that's the highest number. And then the smallest number is with friends, only half an hour a day on average. So what you end up with is this split, right? That people said that having good friends was the number one answer. It was answered by more people than anything else in terms of what was necessary to a fulfilling life. And then when it comes to how you actually spend your time, it was only a half an hour a day. It's one of the things you spend the least time doing. All right? So one of the questions that we have to ask ourselves is, are we making choices that reflect our desires? Or however you want to phrase it, whether it's priorities or goals or whatever it is, of the things that we have decided are important for having a fulfilling life, do we then actually live lives that are in sync with that? Do we actually live lives that move us closer to being where we want to be in life? See, the two are often not in sync. And not being in sync with between what you want or what is good or what is important and what you actually do is kind of at the heart of our passage this week, which begins with Jesus and his disciples being on their way to a certain village. Now, 2 weeks ago, long time ago, I'm sure you don't remember the sermon, but 2 weeks ago, we were at the beginning of chapter 10. So we are at chapter 10, verses 38 through 42 in the Gospel of Luke. 2 weeks ago, we were at chapter 10, verses 1 through 11. So just the beginning of the same chapter. And that passage 2 weeks ago was Jesus sending the 72, is where he sent his disciples out in pairs. And it said that he sent them to villages, that were ahead of where they were going. So as they were traveling to Jerusalem, they would be going to villages. And so essentially he sent his disciples out in pairs to be scouts. They went out to look for places that would welcome them, that would be hospitable to them. And if you remember, if you were watching the sermon 2 weeks ago, when he sent them out with this instruction to carry no purse, no bag, no sandals. And they were sent out with nothing in order that they would have to rely on the hospitality of the houses that they visited, okay? So he sends them out with instructions to take nothing with them, and then this week they're actually on the road. So they're actually going to the places where the disciples had scouted out in advance that they would be welcome. So they get to this house, and it says a woman named Martha welcomed him into her home. Martha's the hostess, and she not only wanted to do this, but the disciples were relying on Martha's hospitality. All right, they were relying on it. So finding people like Martha, finding those homes where Jesus and the disciples would be welcomed on their way to Jerusalem had been the mission of the 72. So somebody had gone ahead. Martha had probably welcomed them, and there were, other villages, a bunch of other villages where they knew that there were homeowners there who would welcome them when they arrived. So they are relying on Martha's hospitality, and of course, it doesn't say exactly what she was doing, but a central part of the passage 2 weeks ago, it kept saying in a couple of places, eat whatever is set before you. So food was an important part of that hospitality. So we can kind of presume that one of the tasks that Martha is engaged in is making dinner for Jesus and the disciples. So she's probably preparing food and all the other things that you would do in order to be hospitable to these visitors. But in the house, what you have is Mary sitting at Jesus' feet and listening to what he is saying. Now, we don't know anything about them, all right, but we often imagine things. So, just think about how you imagine the scene. What does Martha look like? What does Mary look like? How old are they, all right? We don't have any idea of what their ages actually are. And the fact that it says that it's Martha's house indicates that it's possible that she's a widow. All right, because that would be one of the ways in which she, as a woman in that time, would have become a homeowner. All right, so there's a decent possibility that she's old enough to be a widow, but the fact that it's her home and not Mary's home kind of implies that she's probably the older sister. All right, but they aren't necessarily young. It's just that Mary is likely younger than Martha, but like I said, she could be old enough to be a widow. We don't know. But what we do have in the story is that Martha is expecting Mary to help her, and Mary isn't because she's listening to Jesus, and this upsets Martha. So Martha is distracted by her tasks, and she appeals to Jesus. She's feeling uncared for. She feels that Jesus isn't worried about the fact that she's engaged in this act of hospitality for him and his disciples, and her sister is just listening to him. All right? She doesn't even bother, by the way, yelling at her sister. She complains directly to Jesus about her sister. But the important word here is distracted. And this word distracted in the Greek is this word periaspato, which means to be pulled away from a reference point. It's to be pulled away from what's important. Now, Mary is at her reference point. For Mary, the reference point of her life in that moment is to listen to what Jesus has to say. And so she is sitting at the feet of Jesus. She is where she needs to be. Your reference point in your life right now is wherever it is you need to be at this stage in your life. And to be distracted is to allow yourself to be pulled away from that. And yes, she is pulled away from that to the point where she's distracted by her tasks rather than being focused on her tasks. And in fact, she's so distracted by the fact that Mary isn't helping that in this moment, if you think about it, she's not doing anything either. Okay? She's just upset by Mary not helping, so she stopped working. She stopped working because she stopped to go interrupt Jesus and complain to him about her sister. So in that moment, she's not living up to her promise to be welcoming, her promise of hospitality. The idea that she wanted Jesus and the disciples to be there, all right, is something that she said she wanted to do, and then in the moment, she allows herself to not be engaged in it because she's distracted by whether her sister is helping or not. And this is one of the reminders that we have in our lives that if we're going to choose to serve, we need to be happy with the choice. And that's one of the things I really love about our volunteers. I mean, like all organizations, all charitable organizations, whether it is a church or the PTA at a school or whatever it is, all charitable organizations need volunteers, right? We rely on volunteers to make things happen. And one of the things that I really love about our volunteers here is the joy that they bring to their service. All right? The joy that they bring to their service is the most important thing. For example, like our church school. It's one of the things I love about our church school and Vacation Bible Camp. The team at Vacation Bible Camp is so full of joy in working with the kids. And what I love about our church school is the people who are there and they are serving the children, working with the children with joy. That is so important because the kids feel that, right? The kids feel the joy. Now, we could sure use more volunteers in the church school. All right, we could use more group leaders there. But the most important quality that they would bring to that service is the ability to work with kids with joy. All right, to bring that joy and that love that the children would feel in their church school experience. That's the important thing. All right, you shouldn't be, stepping up to say yes just because we need people, or stepping up to say yes because you think it makes you look good, or stepping up to say yes because of peer pressure. None of those things are the reason to say yes. The reason to say yes is because you feel like this is where you belong. This is where your gifts can be used. This is what would make your life more fulfilling, to bring some joy and some love to others, especially our young children in the church school. Because when you step up to say yes, all right, that needs to be your word. One of the most famous verses from Jesus is back in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 5, when Jesus says, "Let your word be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything more than this comes from the evil one." Right? He isn't saying that yes is better than no or no is better than yes. He's not telling you what to choose. He's saying that what you choose, let that be your word. If you say yes, mean it. If you say no, mean it. And when he says anything more than this comes from the evil one, it's because, the evil one is all about deception, all about dishonesty. And so saying yes when you really mean no, or saying no when you really mean yes, that's not being honest. Instead, we need to make answers and stick with them. We need to make choices that we can own and then own the choices we make. You make a choice you can own when you are deciding it of your free will. When I hear Martha's response to Jesus, when Martha is complaining about Mary, one of the things that pops into my mind is, all right, then why did she agree to host? Why did she agree to welcome them into her home in the first place? Because she sure doesn't seem happy about it. She doesn't seem happy just to have them there, and therefore happy to serve, happy to be hospitable. She's not owning her choice. Own the choices that you make. Don't make a choice just to conform or just to abide by expectations. Make it because you can own the choice and then own the choices that you make. Martha, is told by Jesus, you're worried. And then there's this word distracted. See, Jesus never says that the serving is wrong. Jesus is talking about her state of mind here. She's worried and distracted, but that word distracted is actually a poor choice, because distracted has shown up twice in this passage. It said that Martha was distracted by her tasks, and now Jesus says she's distracted. Those are actually in the Greek two completely different words. All right. And I'm going to show you how this verse is translated in a different translation, the New King James Version, where you can see the difference. So that first Greek word I said was this word periaspato. The word here is actually this Greek word thorobazo. And thorobazo means to be upset. It's not to be pulled away. So periaspato was distracted. You're pulled away from your reference point. Thorobazo means to be upset or disturbed. And so the New King James Version translates this with Jesus saying to her, Martha, you are worried and troubled about many things. You're troubled. You're no longer having fun. You're no longer enjoying this. You're no longer experiencing satisfaction from this. She denied herself the satisfaction of service, the joy of service, by being upset with her sister. And so Jesus says to her, and again we're going to talk about the translation of this, he says to her, look, there's need of only one thing. Mary has chosen the better part. And that's an unfortunate translation, because the word Jesus used is actually just this word in Greek, agathos, from which we get the name Agatha. And agathos just means good. It's not a comparative. It's not saying, one is better than the other. It's simply good versus not good, okay? And so, again, the New King James Version, which doesn't always make better translations, but in this passage it actually does, it says, Mary has chosen the good part. In other words, Jesus isn't degrading Martha's choice to serve. And I'm glad about that, because honestly, when I read this passage, I'm with Martha. I am much more Martha than I am Mary. All right. He's not degrading Martha's choice. He's simply saying, look, Mary has chosen a good thing. Mary has chosen a good thing, and by choosing the good thing, it's the good thing for her. Mary chose the thing she needed to choose at that point in her life. And Martha should have been happy with the choice that she made, the choice that she needed to make at that point in her life. Because ultimately, Martha made a good choice. Because it's not about what you choose. the good choice for you is situational. Remember I talked at the beginning about that survey, the perspective survey, and said that the choices, the answers to that question, what's essential to a fulfilling life, changes with age? That's true for each of us. All right? Depending on where we are in life, the answer to the question, what do you need for an essential life, is going to change. It's going to be different from when you're 25 or when you're 45 or when you're 65 or when you're 85. Where you are in life will change the answer to that question. So it's not one size fits all. It's not about saying you made the right choice, this person didn't. Martha made a good choice for where she was in life. She wanted to welcome Jesus and the disciples. She wanted to host them. It was the right choice for her. Mary made a good choice. At that moment in her life, with Jesus and his disciples present in the house, her choice was to sit at the feet of Jesus and listen to him. That is what she needed to do at that point in her life. So this isn't about saying, hey, be like Martha or be like Mary. That's not the point of this passage. The point is, make the choice you need to make. See, Martha made the good choice for her. Mary made a good choice for her. The difference is that Martha got distracted from that choice. Martha didn't stick with it. Martha wasn't content to simply have made that choice and live by it. Mary did. Mary chose to sit at the feet of Jesus, and I'm pretty sure she was aware that her sister wasn't happy with her. But she stuck with it anyway. She continued to sit at the feet of Jesus because that was the choice she needed to make for her in that moment. So what we need to remember to do is to choose what's best for our lives. All right? Because our lives get off track in two very basic ways. That first basic way is by not making the right choices. Our choices get off track by not having goals that fit with helping us become who we want to be. All right? When we ask ourselves that question, what do I need to choose in order to have a fulfilling life? And by fulfilling, it's never self-centered, right? I believe that God created us in such a way that the most fulfilling life we will live is a life that we live in service, a life that we live in making the world a better place for others. All right? Because at the end of the day, I think we all have a yearning, a desire to leave behind a legacy of having made the world better than how we found it. So I believe that our fulfillment will always not be self-centered. I believe living a fully self-centered life will not be fulfilling at all. All right? But situationally, only we can know what will help us live a fulfilling life in the circumstance that we find ourselves in. And so once we know what that is, once we've thought about that, prayed about it, and decided what that is, we need to stay focused on living into the choices that help us move in that direction. Don't let the external things bother you. Don't let what someone else's, behavior is bother you. Don't feel peer pressured into making choices that are not the best choices for a fulfilling life. Because at the end of the day, to achieve that good life, the fulfilling life, the God-honoring life, is really all we need. So let's stay focused on that and not allow ourselves to be pulled away from it. Amen.